Thank you for joining us on our journey here to preserve the history of mixed martial arts. When I wanted to take on this project, I needed help. I brought in one of my favorite matchmakers, Miguel Edwards, and the MMA detective, Mike Davis. So to do this, we've been able to preserve history. Welcome and enjoy.
Hey, Miguel Edwards back here on the Lights Out podcast. As always, the MMA detective, Mike Davis here. And we're about to be joined by the boss, Chris Lytle, with another 50 Fight Club member. And we're going to be off on another deep dive, this time with veteran Rich Clementi. Definitely one of the old school guys that we've got access to. And I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. What do we got for Rich, Mike? I know we can't do it all with him.
No, so Rich, although he's from the Bayou, and I think he had some time in like the Massachusetts area for a while.
I think he's from Jersey, or I had an association.
Jersey, like, yeah, just that, that upper region. He actually had a lot of interactions here in the Midwest. Like he would bring his team around. I think he got in a fist fight with a promoter at one point because he was stiffing everybody. All of it's going to come up. Like I actually have an old school file on him. Between my file and the fights, I think it was like 22, 23 hours total of really just digging into his career was spent. And he's a talker, so it's a good thing. I think we're going to get some real good stories out of him. So I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I'm excited. I obviously haven't talked to him in more than a decade, But what I remember is a guy who would be, like some of the fighters show up and they just want, tell me when the weigh-ins are. I'll go do this, that, and the other thing. But Rich was a guy who was always looking for opportunities, always looking to see if things were going well too, And smart cat, a lot of stuff going on. He ran shows while he was fighting, incredibly difficult to do. So we'll see what we get, but I think that he's going to teach us a few things about the way things were in the 90s.
I agree. And he held, like you said, he had multiple hats. He matchmade, he promoted, he fought. So it's a guy that understands multiple facets of the fight industry, and a fighter will generally tell you, oh, I know what they go through. But then when they experience it, they go, wait a minute, this is a completely different ballgame. As well as like you and I, Miguel, being on the fighter side, those, 6 to 8 week camps, we can't really wrap our head around because, we're not going through them either. But I will ask everybody, if you guys enjoy this stuff, it helps us out if you like, share, subscribe, leave a 5-star review on iTunes. If you guys help us, we can continue making this work and it grows. Like we're showing like a little bit of growth every episode. And the only way that continues is with likes and shares. So we really appreciate it. Every single person that does it, it's sincerely appreciated. So with that, Miguel, why don't we get started?
Let's bring on the fighters. We got Chris Lytle and Rich Clementi here in short order.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. Very happy to have everybody here. One of my favorite things, deep dives. We got good news here. Got one of the old school guys like myself. Guys had a ton of fights. And this is a guy who, like the other old school guys, he earned his way to the big dance. He earned his way to UFC because the dude had probably 30 fights before he even got there. Maybe more. I don't know. Guy fought forever. I was fortunate enough to be on the Ultimate Fighter 4 with this guy. Always been a great competitor and a good guy. Rich Clementi, how you doing, brother?
Doing great, man. Doing great. And, absolutely love seeing you. Chris, I've been bumping into you a lot lately, so that's a pleasure as well.
I know. I hadn't seen you for years, and then I started seeing you at some fights, so it's been awesome.
Yep, absolutely.
Definitely good to see you, Rich. You look good. What's going on here? We'll let Mike take over, but what's going on? You look like you went from no love to Dr. Love. What's going on with the outfit, dude?
Yeah, so I kind of spent years punishing and trying to hurt people, right? Put them in the hospital, and now I'm doing the exact opposite, trying to help people. Just to really kind of sum it up, I guess. I was dealing with so many physical issues myself. That I was really chasing a lot of physical problems, and that really intrigued me. So that's what kind of drew me into medicine to begin with. And really, I specialize and deal mostly in pain management. So I'm a distributor. I work directly for myself, but represent some really great products I was lucky enough to be involved in launching a few like Fortune 500 products as well too. But bringing them to market, I really like new technologies. High pressure sales is super exciting. Like if it wasn't for this space, like I don't know what I'd be doing, to be honest, because you have the highs and lows. You know, I deal with some really smart guys as far as, you know, trying to get them convinced to change their habits. That's tough to do. So in medical sales, the highs are the highs, and then the lows are the lows, you know? So I've done a lot of different things in business, but this is definitely the most rewarding, because I get all that personal reward, and at the same time get to help people at the same time. And, you know, it really doesn't get too much better than that.
Now, Rich, real quick, do you think that like a competitiveness you had fighting everything, is that just translate over? Is this just a different market avenue for it?
Oh, absolutely. It was funny. I was at a big sales convention probably about, I don't know, like 4 weeks ago. And one of the competitor managers came up to me, and he's totally drunk too, and came up to me at the bar, and he's like, you know, you're just a little too pushy and a little bit too competitive. I said, I take that as the best compliment you can.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As he's like a 40-year-old, like a manager that's had the same position for the last 20 years, you know?
Yeah.
No thanks, buddy. You just keep your life goals.
Exactly.
Yeah. Huh. So, Rich, you've transitioned from the MMA world. And
we're gonna take you back.
Yeah, we're gonna take you back. I mean, once I get going, it's gonna be like kind of like a little freight train. So I'm just kind of asking to kind of keep things in order.
Yeah, I hope I can remember.
I think we'll be good. But Chris, do you want to start with, you know, your questions that you know, how we got involved and stuff like that?
Yeah, man. I mean, I know you have kind of a wrestling background. What sports did you do, and what got you into combative sports? What got you into MMA?
So I'm going to say a name that probably, one person I know really knows well on this conversation right here. But I wrestled in high school and was in the military at the time, actually, United States Navy. And you know, just so you would go way back, my senior year of high school is when the Ultimate Fighter Championship came out, right? UFC 1. And I don't know how it was for you, Chris. Like most people in the sport remember that first time. And I mean, what a spectacle, you know? And what all the tough kids did in my school was we all signed up and we did this tournament, and we put in $50 each, right? So there was maybe about 30 tough kids in my high school and around the surrounding areas that all pitched in $50. And my name got drawn first. So that was the very first fight on this bracket. I was fighting this Russian exchange student. I remember a high school senior, right? We'll
call this a kumite.
Yeah, there was like 200 kids in the park. I don't know how the hell the cops didn't show up.
No
but
doubt.
Anyway, so I'm fighting this tall Russian exchange student, and the very first punch, I fake a level change. Everybody knew I wrestled, and he was actually a boxer. I faked the level change. He dropped his hand, and I just crushed his nose. Displaced fracture, you know, nose over the side of his face. He falls on the ground, and I hit him with like a few knees to the head, and it was done like in 20 seconds. Well, kid didn't come to school for like almost a week, and when he came back, he had sunglasses on. His eyes were all blown up. And everybody pulled out of the tournament, right? Everybody's like,
winner.
Shit. No, everybody got refunded. So I had the one fight, and they gave everybody their money back. But I would say that even like the recorded record of my experiences, that was like it was an experience. So that was my senior year of high school, and I fell in love with the sport, man. I really did. So I was kind of dabbling. I moved to Louisiana because that's where I was stationed down here, and I was dabbling with some jiu-jitsu programs. Most of the jiu-jitsu schools hated me here because I had a wrestling background. So I was like the guy that came in and just kind of got on top of you and just held you. You know what I'm saying? So they really didn't like me to come to their schools and stuff like that. So I was training at a small little kind of hybrid martial arts school, I guess you could say. And there was a big event that happened. A guy named Jamie Levine, right?
Oh, it's Miguel's favorite promoter.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Him and Miguel were buddies, I think, right? Is that true, Miguel?
Something like that.
You know, we worked together.
You guys dated women around the same age. Go ahead, Rich.
Too soon?
So we'll skip it. We'll talk privately offline on that.
Yeah, with the cops.
No. We can air it all out here. I don't care.
But Steve Judson, remember him? He got knocked out in one of the UFC. It's like
By Brad Kohler.
Yeah, the beginning promo
Horribly.
for like 10 years. It was just a beautiful knockout. Well, anyway, he was scheduled on the main card at the Stomp in the Swamp here in Louisiana. And it was the main event was Conan Severa versus Maury Smith, right? And, I was like 3 fights or 4 fights in front of that, and I was fighting a guy that was like 15-1. I never even knew what martial arts really was. So I fought a heavyweight at the time. And,
How much did you weigh?
At 227.
Okay, wow.
Okay, so let me kind of paint this picture a little. So on October 9, 1999, WEF7, Rich gets scheduled to fight Chris Seifert on a last-minute deal. Am I correct?
They were already down here. They're like, shit, is there any tough guys here? And my name was like ringing around. There's like, yeah, there's this wrestler from New Jersey. He's kind of tough and has an attitude. So they asked me, and I'm like, sure, I'll do it. I don't care, you know.
So Seifert at the time was 14-2-1. You were 0-0. And you say 226, but they listed you on the event at 208 pounds.
Yeah. Maybe I was. I don't know. I thought I was a little heavier than that.
And Seifert was 215.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. But that's a lot of experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Swamp in the Swamp is a little bit of a legendary show. 20-something fights, too. That day.
And there were some guys on that. Carl Schmidt was an up-and-coming guy that was down from Louisiana. I mean, Steve, especially the Florida scene. So the Florida at the time, and Miguel will validate this, probably had some of the best up-and-coming guys in the country, to be honest. Besides Monty's guys, I think that crew of guys that kind of followed Jamie around and that he tried to build up. And I mean, there was really some good guys out of that area.
Dean Thomas, Paul Rodriguez.
Yeah.
That was his frontline guys for a
so
long
Rich,
time.
You were listed as a Shin Jitsu guy.
Did you make that up?
What is that?
I didn't. I was definitely not that. That was that kind of that was that little martial arts school that I told you that I went to because there was the only place around that had mats, basically, you know.
Was it like Shin, like your Shin, or was it just like CHIN?
No, it was SHIN. So and the instructor was like a black belt in Taekwondo years ago, with some, just not really much grappling experience at all. So I think I brought some value to his program with my wrestling background. But again, it was more, I was in the military at the time. So it was like something kind of positive to do with my time, while I was still in and stuff like that. So
2 weeks prior to this bout, you guys actually had a grappling, you were in a grappling, like super fight, I guess, with him. And you lost by rear naked choke.
Correct.
Okay. Did that come into play with you? It's your first fight, jitters. You've already seen the guy on the mat.
I never had jitters when I fought. No, it was. I just don't like losing, so I was kind of pissed off, and I was like, "Fuck this jiu-jitsu guy." I'm like, "Oh, he might have beat me with jiu-jitsu, but I'll go in there and punch him in the face, and it'll be different." That was. I mean, I didn't know anything really about the sport. It's just I was a tough guy, and I was pissed off that I lost at something that I'm not used to losing at.
That's good. How was it dealing with Jamie Levine?
Oh, that dude, he was such a snake, man.
Come on. Really?
So I fought, and I'll use his proper name, Crazy Horse. And that was when he was kind of at the top of his career. We fought in the legal barn in Florida at the time because they didn't allow MMA in the barn. And they didn't allow MMA in Florida. They allowed it at the barn in that night for sure. And literally, I had this dude in the mounted triangle. There was no rules whatsoever. Mounted triangle. I'm 12-6ing him elbows to the face, right, in a mounted triangle. And Jamie's yelling cage side because that was the next guy he was trying to promote. He's yelling at the ref, who I think might have been Rodriguez or someone like that. You better not stop it. He's fine. Let it keep going. And I must have spiked him 20 times to the face, But anything that guy said, you just couldn't trust. Nothing.
So back to that first fight. How'd that go? You're fighting a guy who's 14-2. You've never had a fight.
Oh, it's such an ugly fight. Unfortunately, it's online. It was just horrible. It was embarrassing. I was embarrassed at myself. But just like any person that has a lot of drive, watching that really pissed me off. It's not like who I wanted to personally be, And fast forward through that, even after that fight, I was really set on like being better. Well, unfortunately, I was matched up with really tough guys with lots of experience. Like most of the time, purple belts and up, and you know how it is when you're doing jiu-jitsu, even if you have, a little bit of experience against someone who has no jiu-jitsu experience, you're going to prevail almost every time. And
it's not that bad. Yeah. Rich, it's not that bad. You got pinned. Like it was 3 2-minute rounds.
You got pinned.
You got pinned.
I'm not just saying that, but even moving forward, I was 3-6. That was like my record. Like
we're getting there.
Hold on, but just to defend what you're saying there, man. I mean, there's been a lot of guys we've had on here, Nick Thompson, all these guys. Like, how long do you train? I trained for 2 weeks, and they came out and like everybody starts off with an upside down record because they're just fighting guys with experience. That's how it was back in the day. That's why all the guys. Like I said, you're the guy who made it. There were like 30-something fights. We all had it back then because you had to fight all the time, and just anybody that was there, it wasn't the same as now.
Listen to this. He says he went 3-6, right? So, but listen to these guys. You're already talking about Chris Seifert experience advantage. Ben Earwood, Rick McCoy, Steve Berger. Later on, Pete Spratt, real short after that. No, I understand that, but as we get to him, it's a murderer's row, though. It is.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You want to keep going?
Even Artie Brito is tough.
Especially Ben Earwood, man. Like that's the funny story right there. So I got called up. I was like all excited because I'm like, yeah, people know who I am. I'm getting called up to travel and fight now. That's like the next level for a local guy, And I'm going to someplace Davenport, Iowa. Like fuck those farm fed guys up there. And I remember I was like close to the last fight. This Ben Earwood guy, supposedly, who was like this other guy, Matt Hughes' protege, whoever the fuck that guy was. And I remember like literally every guy that fought before me, because Monty didn't have like close fights where it was like 60-40 splits. They were like 80-10 splits. Yeah. And almost every guy on that fight card before my fight came in a stretcher, like every single one of them. And that pissed me off so bad. And I'll tell you, out of a 15-minute fight, I spent like 12 minutes on my back straight, to the point where Ben was even like, fucking tap out already, you motherfucker. Like he was telling me that.
Chris fought him in the UFC. It was Chris's first UFC fight.
He just held me down for 10 minutes. It was boring.
Yeah, he was actually a better ref than I mean, he was a good fighter, but a little like he was a ref too, like more on the circuit. But let's let Mike take back over because I think we skipped a couple fights.
Yeah, we skipped everything.
So yeah,
go ahead, Mike. Get this. Get it.
Come on, you know how sensitive I am. I mean, come on.
I know. Come on. That's Miguel.
All right, so your second fight, I have to assume you're a monster ticket seller. I have to, like, even for your first fight. Because on your second fight for Reality Combat Fighting, you're the main event, and you're fighting Rick Thompson.
Yeah.
Okay. How does an 0-1 guy end up main eventing on a card?
It was probably, to be honest, it was more my attitude, to be honest. I didn't give a shit. I wasn't scared. You know what I'm saying? And I think that alone. So, like, I just went out there and I was excited. I tried to, like, smush guys' heads against the face and cage and like scrape it down the side, as I'm punching him. Like that's the type of fighter I like to be. And I kind of wish that I would have kept a little bit more of that my career, to be honest, now I look back.
So Miguel, as a matchmaker, do you think Rich was the guy that was overselling himself? And because of that was getting much harder fights than he should have been at that time? I mean, you're looking at his record. It's nuts.
Well, I think Chris has talked about it. I think guys, once they reach a certain level or are destined to reach a certain level, they have certain makeup And I think that, like he said, he doesn't, you know, it doesn't sit well with him that he's not doing well. And yeah, I think he's probably very confident that he's like, I'll win the next one. I'll win the next one, which is,
and I was a great guy to
natural.
bring it. If you had a guy you were building, right, that was kind of right at the cusp, I was a great guy to bring in because that guy's not going to, you're not going to beat me in 5 seconds. You know, I'm not going to tap out quick. So that your guy who you're building probably could actually get some really good work in. It's going to be an entertainment fight. And, you know, it's going to be a struggle. But at the end of the day, if your top performer is doing what he's doing 9 times out of 10 at that time in my career, he probably should beat me, you know? So that's probably at the time, and not knowing business really at the time, I really didn't look at it that way. You know, I was just looking to fight. That's what I like to do.
I don't think anybody was. I don't think anybody really was.
Well, you weren't making money back then. There was no big, like, there was no huge payday at the end of the day. It's like a few people in the world made good money. It's like, yeah, this is just fun. This is what I like to do. So I'm going to do it.
Yeah, and at the time, I probably did it for ring girl phone numbers, to be honest.
A good payday.
Chris, he also fights right after that in a 4-man tournament for Reality Combat. So, I mean, you got a home base, which is important to have when you're building yourself up. And in the first round, you fight Scott Malia, who I think I found a little snippet of it. You knocked him out pretty quick. And Malia never fights again. Like he had enough. Whatever he experienced with Rich,
he
certainly scratched that itch, and that was it. And then you fight Warren Donnelly beats Aristides Brito. Donnelly's 12-3, but he can't continue. So they throw Brito in with yourself. So now you get your first win. And now you're heading into the finals of a 4-man tournament. Was there adrenaline issues or anything of that nature?
There's actually a great backstory there. So Warren Donnelly wasn't hurt at all, actually. He was warming up right next to me. And all I was having my training partner do, because he was a wrestler. He's a very well-known wrestler, wrestling coach at one of the big high schools over here. And I just had my training partner shoot in, and all I was working was jump knees on my training partner, right? And I'm looking at it, and I made this dude so nervous, he actually just pulled out of the fight. And this was a guy that was pretty experienced, right? But fast forward, you'll see that me and him fight. So I don't know. I'm trying to be nice. You guys told me not to get out of order.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. No, okay. We have to not get out of order. You know, we're trying to reel you in. Go ahead.
No, anything we could do to drive Mike crazy is okay.
That's true.
So 2 years later, I fought on Dan Severn headlined a card down here, and me and him fought, and it was probably one of my most brutal knockouts ever. Good enough. His back foot, I was backing him up, kind of stalking him down. Close first round. He was a little gassed going in the second. I'm backing him up. I'm stalking him. His back foot touches the cage, and I see his eyes get big. Well, I know it's so embedded in him to do it. He shoots. I sidestep him, hit with a jump knee shin to the face. Boom! You know, completely knocked out. Hyperventilated it was kind of scary, actually. Hyperventilated probably for almost like 10 minutes, man. I mean, he was out cold. I checked on him afterwards, right? And I came up to him like, man, Warren, I'm sorry. He's a really great guy, to be honest. And what's funny, though, he goes, Rich, I really don't even give a shit what happened to me in this match. He goes, for 2 years, you haunted me because you owned me as a man. Because when I didn't fight you that day, it bothered my confidence. It like haunted me. And I was afraid I was going to have to live with that for the rest of my life. So it was almost like that. I relieved him of that. You know, that day. So it was kind of cool, but
you're a giver.
Yeah.
but that's understandable.
Yeah, I respect it though. I mean, he was honest about it, and he faced his fear.
100%.
Right?
It's more than most men do, to be honest.
Yeah. And Artie Brito went 0-2 that day, but still a tough guy, and still a guy
he's fought for you many a times, has he not?
I don't think he was definitely like a guy I was aware of, but no, I don't think I ever signed him.
I thought he was a hook and shoot.
I don't think
he was an extreme challenge guy. I know he was extreme challenge. I figured he bounced.
No, he was from the South, but
what did you win for that tournament?
Oh shit.
Two ring card, your phone number.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually did, but I don't know if it was a title belt or a ringside belt, but it was something similar in nature.
No money?
Oh yeah, I mean right away I fought pro right out the gun. So I mean, who knows, few $100 at the time. I don't remember.
not enough to remember. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I really can't, now that I look back on it, I don't really remember any real paydays that I could super remember, to be honest. I mean, there might have been a few in there, but for the most part, I mean, I did it because I like doing it. It was an expression of who I was really at the time.
Well, so you're 2-2 at this point, and then you fight in the World Valley Judo Federation against Demetrius Wilson. Okay. Is this like no rules? Because I saw some headbutts in this fight.
Yeah, so I really don't recall, to be honest, but I knocked him out with a break heel stun karate chop from guard on bottom, right? Pushed his head to the side, gave him like a shot, like, and the dude was out cold on top of me. And the crazy thing is like, it looked like he was just laying on me, not doing anything. And I'm telling the ref, I'm like, he's unconscious, man. I knocked him out, And it was such a short little chop, like just all my body there to it. And when I stood up, like the crowd was booing because like they didn't know what happened. They just thought he gave up. But I thought that was like the most badass thing. I'm like, I'm gonna knock out this guy with a karate chop to the neck.
Some dim mak.
From the bottom.
For the bottom, yeah.
That's all those board breaking techniques you were doing over at Shin Jitsu. It really paid off.
100%.
So that was with headbutts. There was no rules, which is kind of speaks of what type of competitor you are. To be honest with you, like you're 3-2 and you're entering into areas and waters that are pretty deep, and most people are afraid to kind of stick their toe in. And then on August 26th, 2000. Your relationship at this point, I believe, starts to begin with Monte Cox, because I know he later on managed you. That's where you fought Ben Earwood.
Yeah, because he and it was funny. Afterwards, he came up to me, and I love Monty. I mean, I would honestly, my father died when I was young, and I'll be honest. I mean, if I would say that anyone was like a true mentor to me and a father figure, I have a few people too, but just absolutely amazing human being. Well, me and that guy never even had an official contract. I paid him thousands and thousands of dollars over the years. It was off a handshake, and I like that because it's reciprocating on both ends. I believe if you had Monty on the line, he would probably tell you the same stuff about me. But yeah, he came up to me, that I was fucking all lumped up and shit. And he came up to me, he's like, man, you're a pretty tough dude, He's like, let me get your number. I want to bring your ass up here and get it beat again, but definitely I want you on board, I'll have some other stud to throw your way.
Earwood beats Rich, as we had discussed already, and his very next fight's UFC 28 against Chris. So it was your one of your common opponents, I should say. From there, you fight Rick McCoy in Danger Zone. Not only do we love Danger Zone, Dan Severn is probably in our number 2 favorite.
Right, Chris? I mean, didn't you guys?
What's that?
Didn't you fight for them quite a bit? If I remember.
I never fought for Danger Zone.
Oh, really? I thought you did, man.
No.
Okay.
How was Severn as a promoter?
It wasn't Severn at the time. It was Becky Levi, actually. It was Becky. Becky did all the work. He was just kind of the front guy and the big smile and the handshake and warm, fuzzy personality. But Becky was the bulldog behind all that.
Did you pay for the videotape of your fight?
I actually did have to. It's funny that you say that. And I remember fighting on the card, and this dude came out with this Walmart like chain around his neck, and I was like, look at this clown. It was Quentin Jackson. Nobody knew who he was at the time, but that was his start as well too, if I'm not mistaken. It was in the kind of Danger Zone promotion. He was actually living out of a van at the time, so he pulled up in his house van and brought his garden chain out, and he was pretty entertaining that night as well too. So that was kind of fun.
He started the van life thing. I thought it was a new thing, but no, he was an originator. It sounds like.
100%.
Van life.
Yeah, that Rick McCoy guy is tough, and you actually, that show was in Virginia, and you're in his hometown there.
I felt I should have won that decision, to be honest, but you know how it is. We go in someone's backyard. I mean, it was a great fight. I'm not taking anything away from him, to be honest, but it was a really grinding fight on both ends. But it was cool because I think that I was starting to, at that point, start to establish a little bit of a reputation for myself, you know, other than just being a tough guy to be brought in. Like, I was actually starting to accumulate some skills at this time and stuff like that.
You know, Rich, especially back then, though, I mean, it's a little different. When you had you were in somebody's hometown, it wasn't like you had these judges that were like the state certified judges. You had the promoters' buddies who were judges. Let's be honest.
The guys' training partners.
That's all it was. Yeah, training partners. That guy's training partners were the judges. How was any of this legal? I don't know, but you know, before they had like real judges, all those things that have asterisks by them. But there's a lot of fights where you lose and split decisions. Like, yeah, I mean, people boo. It's like that means anything. You still got the loss, but I know what you mean.
It's not that it was. How is this legal? It's just that it wasn't illegal. That's all.
Right. So,
which then makes it legal.
Miguel, can we talk about the main event of that card and if Rich actually? So, Miguel, why don't you mention the main event? We see each other looking at each other.
The main event is Severn Fulton 1. It's a classic. You know, we got a classic on here.
That actually was. If you'd have asked me the main event, I would not have recalled it. As soon as you said that. That was probably go down as one of the best fights I've ever seen, actually. It was amazing.
Please explain.
Yes.
No, it just because you expected Fulton to get his ass kicked. And if I'm remembering correctly, like he rocked the shit out of Dan quite a few times, if I recall. I mean, I'll have to.
How did it end?
Wasn't it a decision? I don't know. I don't recall.
They fell out of the ring and Dan ran back in and beat the 10 count.
Stop it!
Are you kidding me?
Please stop.
Yeah. You've got you know, a live recollection, but like the stuff that's come out about that fight afterwards is a little different.
You gotta watch it. It's amazing.
A touch of trivia when I got to matchmake Matt Hume's last fight, and he fought Payne Peters, the Canadian fight. But Rick McCoy was the number 2 guy. He heavily negotiated for that fight, and that was close to happening. And I think McCoy would have been a more dangerous opponent, but Payne Peters was a bigger name. So just a little trivia.
I believe he does a lot of stuff for the boxing commission in Virginia now. I believe he's like their head guy and stuff.
He's a lifer in this business. Rick McCoy deserves more credit than he gets, I think.
I agree. So Severn versus Fulton. Classic, legendary work. They did a fantastic job, fooled a lot of people, and from there you go.
I need to go back and watch it then because I remember as a fan being there.
Rich, I just gave you a way out. Just go. Yeah, you're right. Yeah, fooled a lot of people.
I'm gonna go back and check it.
Okay. So
I have been punched in the head a few times, just for the record.
It's true.
I can use that as a disclaimer.
It's true. So from there. That legendary main event, dude, you fight Steve Berger November 25th, 2000. And although, I mean, it ends in the first round, when you look at the totality of your record and his record, like as a promoter, I see a fight like that and somebody has it on the indie grind. I'm incredibly jealous that they had that fight because it's 2 first-class competitors. Why don't you walk us through Steve Berger?
Yeah, I really don't recall too much of it. I just remember making a really critical mistake, and it, you know, the guys now, and I tell my sons this all the time. So my sons are top tier wrestlers, youth wrestlers, and I try to tell them, I'm like, you guys have like the golden ticket, man. You could sit there all day and watch all this cool shit, almost to the point where it's overwhelming on the internet. What to do when this. You know, how to counter this, all these things. Yeah, you know how I learned how to counter shit is because someone did it to me and I have a big L by my name. You know what I'm saying? And I said, I'm never going to do that again. You know? Yep. So, but yeah, I just remember kind of making a critical mistake and him catching a submission on it. We still actually, he has exactly opposite political views than I do. But we chat a lot on Facebook. Usually it's little showing, throwing shots across the bows at each other. But in a friendly way. He's a great dad. You know, he a hard worker. And those are the two most important things to me in life, and the relationships that I'm around. So regardless if I disagree with every one of his political views, he's a great guy.
Because he's wrong. You disagree with him because he's wrong.
He's wrong.
Right?
100%. Yeah. Why else would I say that?
Right. So, Miguel, who was the main event on that card?
Oh, that one was insane in Fort Wayne, and this is also Dan Severn taking on Aaron Keeney.
So we just had the Danger Zone main matchmaker and promoter, and he said, "Oh yeah, no. Not only did I matchmake, promote, and do everything, I was also the referee. That fight was also a work." He just disclosed that to us a few days ago, actually, in an interview.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, Severn.
I don't recall that fight. I remember just being pissed off because I actually, it was weird, man. If I won, right, and it was like a nasty drag out fight, I mean, I felt so full of life and energy. But if I had a really quick win, I was almost like somewhat depressed. And when I lost, it was the same way. If I would lose and just where I had a lot of respect for a guy, I was like, damn, man, that dude's tough. I would go out feeling fulfilled. But if I had a match where I got injured or something like that, or it was just, I got snagged in something early, like that was like the most depressive thing for me for whatever reason. I don't know how it was for you, Chris, but I really struggled with whether I won or lost. But if it was quicker in nature, it really just didn't sit well with me either way.
Yeah, I mean, to me, just the way you fight means a lot. I've lost like several split decisions, and I mean, they were very painful. But looking back later on, it's like, you know what? I went out there and did what I could. And if it's a good fight, you know, that's kind of why you really fight to begin with. It wasn't for wins or losses or money. It's because you want to go out there and fight. If you did what you could, you had somewhat of a good feeling about it. You know what I mean? So yeah, that was always a good thing. You know what I mean?
But my wins, what's weird is my wins were sometimes somewhat depressing for the same reason. You know, it was just like, I felt like I put so much in and I never got to release that, you know, like the release of all that, that work and the effort and the anger that came along with that. If I didn't get that out, it was problematic for the most part.
And I've told people, I definitely rather, like, I love those fights. I go out and I win in 30 seconds, but there's something way more meaningful than a fight where I got knocked down, had to come back in the second, third round and grind it out and win it. I mean, those mean something more. It's like I tested myself and I passed. You know, it's not, I can knock somebody out in 30 seconds. Yeah. So those mean way more to me.
100%.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, I mean, it's just a competitor in you. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Like, you need to scratch that itch, you know? It's
that's what built the sport too, though, you know, like, yeah, we've heard a consistent message from guys of that generation of that, you know, it wasn't the money, it was a lot of, you know, internal stuff, prove to myself. Exactly. And then also we've heard a lot of them criticize the newer generation. Like even Rich mentioned, being, you know, being able to scout the way they can scout now is such an advantage, such a difference. So they are pampered. So it's like, they just, guys come from a weird cloth or a different cloth that think that way, but that's what it is. A lot of the guys the top guys, a consistent message.
Yeah, I'm sure Chris feels the same way. You know, it's kind of like a badge that you wear because of that. It's a little different now, I feel, you know. But I'll tell you, those experiences and stuff, you know, it truly defined who I am today. I mean, I have to really pay it all almost on through that experience and stuff. You know, I'm really defining a lot of my thought process and just who I am in general. So I'm appreciative of it.
Well, Rich, I look at, like, you know, some of my biggest losses, and I feel like that helped define me as a person in a way. And sometimes it destroys people, but like, to me, I was like, it made me, I don't know if I'd be where I am now if it weren't for that. Like, I know no matter what you do to me, I'm going to be successful. I'm just going to make it happen no matter what. Where I didn't know that before, you know, if it's too easy for you, just if you're successful all the time, I never had that problem. You know, I had some hurdles to go through, but now I'm just like, I feel like I can do anything because of it. And I think you're the same way. Look at where you're at right now. It's because of all the trials and tribulations you went through. It made you into the person you are, and you're killing now because of that, and not in spite of that in many ways. So it's a good thing to have some adversity. It's how you deal with it. You've dealt with it properly, and some people never can deal with that.
Yeah, I know. I agree 100%.
So when you first met Jamie Levine, you took a last minute fight at around 210 pounds. So now he's trying to push Charles Crazy Horse Bennett, and Charles is every bit of like 150 pounds, but he feels comfortable putting him in with you December 16th, 2000 at what is tantamount to what you had said appears to be like some sort of illegal fight in Florida.
Yeah, it was. You couldn't have MMA fights over there. It was still it was not legal.
What was the weight difference between you two?
I don't recall. You probably have that information. I don't think it was too far off, though, to be honest. I was already fighting at I would like to say I was floating around 160 most of the time. You know, I really wish they would have brought that weight class in. I would say that was probably the toughest thing for me with the sport, and still probably for some guys. 170, the height advantage. You know, when you talk about MMA, leverage is extremely important. So 170, you know, I was fighting guys like Ron Canero and Anthony Johnson, who are just super, super tall, and that leverage and reach makes just such a difference. But 155 is such a cut. It's such a huge different weight. I really, really would have benefited from like a 160. That's really where I needed to be. I struggled bad getting that down to 55. And again, I was giving up too much of a deficit most of the time at 170.
I mean, the 170 to 150, that's 15 pounds, man. Why they needed like a 162 and a half to really split the distance or something.
Yeah,
I mean,
I've always thought
15
that.
pounds is too much, man. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, 70 to 85.
Same thing.
85 to 205.
Yeah.
It's just nuts. Yeah, it's crazy. So Rich, you're fighting like every 3 weeks at this point, like 3 to 4 weeks, you've got a bout. A lot of times, like Chris has mentioned, it's different when you're training for a fight and training to learn. Did you have that issue at this point in your career?
No, not really. So, and that was one thing that was nice as, I mean, we're still a little ahead of, but specifically when it rolled into, you know, becoming part of Team Extreme with Monte Cox and helping Jens out with some of his fights, there was no real training to learn ever at that place. Like you sparred every day. You know, and my program, I developed a program here in the South once I started fighting, and I was kind of the main guy that was really starting to put some fuel on the sport here in the area. I started doing small promotions to try to see and gather some talent, you know, kind of start creating my own team here. So we just fought all the time. You know, I mean, every Sunday, someone they actually knew us at the ER over there, because most generally we'd send somebody, we'd just take like a roll of toilet paper and stick it to the guy's laceration on his head, and we tape it a few times and draw a smiley face and put the time on it and send them over the hospital. Yeah. So but that's just, and now you don't see guys like training like that anymore, and it's probably for the better, to be honest, because when you look at my fights, I mean, I got a shitload of fights, but I fought every week. So regardless, you say every 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I sparred 100% at least 2 or 3 times a week, which I look back on now, and it's that's definitely where I deal with some of my health issues. Luckily, I have decent head movement, so I've never been knocked out. But you know, some of the guys that I trained with actually struggle. I don't want to go into the personal information on some of them, but they struggle because of that time fear. And I feel somewhat guilty because of that. But, you know, that's all I knew at the time, you know, and a lot of guys, you know, you've seen the success that the Militich has had and stuff like that. So you thought that was the way. So that's what you emulated.
Well, Rich, you know, and I talk about that a lot too. I mean, there's definitely some pros to that. You know, you develop a certain kind of mental toughness, and you know how to take a punch on that. But I mean, people don't train like that anymore for a reason, you know, but we didn't know we were the blind leading the blind back then. You just do what you thought was best, and you did have a certain level of toughness that people don't have now. But there's a long-term consequence to pay for it, you know. So I wish I had done stuff different too, but I didn't know any better back then. Just go hard as you can.
Remember that, Chris? There was a time period that, like, if you tapped out in the UFC, you were cut. Like, you weren't fighting. If you tapped out, like, especially from punches, that was like, you were a big pussy, and you don't need to fight at the time. That if you tapped out from strikes, you know, you weren't being put on a big card. That was the tone at the time.
Roll over and give up the choke. Go out with honor. You know what I mean? That's the only way it was. You're right.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's wild. So January 27th, like I said, you're kind of on 3.5, 4 week increments here at this point. This one, obviously a little bit more. Reality Combat Fighting 9 at 170 pounds, your hometown, you fight Pete Spratt. How does that fight get put together?
No, I was, it was at the point where I was starting to really get some traction. You know, I was going to people's gyms. I was wrecking shop. Nobody locally wanted to fight me. So, you know, that's all they could do is bring in kind of tougher guys, you know? Pete cheated his ass off in that fight. I mean, me and Pete are good friends, but half the pictures you see, he's hanging like over the top of the fence and shit like that, like holding on, like reaching over the top with like fingers holding on. And at the time, like, you know, that it wasn't really enforced like it is now, you know? So he stopped like 4 or 5 takedowns on me. And then I wore down a little bit, and then he hit me with a super solid punch that cracked my orbital, actually. So then it was short-lived after that. If you've never had a cracked orbital, it's probably one of the more painful injuries that you can get.
All right. So, Chris, you tend to kind of concentrate on the mental aspects where people were at in their careers. Rich, at this point, you're 1-3 in your last 4 fights, and you got your cracked orbital in front of your hometown. Where are you at mentally at this point?
I'm stupid or what? I don't know, but I mean, I was actually extremely motivated for whatever reason. I liked, you know, it's funny because my oldest son's like a playboy, man. He's a super smooth wrestler. He's yoked up. He's got a great look about him. And it's funny because when he turned 13, I took him on like this dad walk where I wanted him to see some of the hardships I had in my life that helped define me. So we went to this place I grew up at. It was super, super challenging area, and it was a low part of my life for sure. Another thing that helped define me. But it was funny because we were walking, and I asked him, I'm like, you know, what's my motivator? And he's like, Dad, he goes, to be honest, he's like, I just think you hated everything in life. So you just wanted to change, had so much anger, you kind of took it out on everybody. And I asked him, I was like, well, what's yours? And he's like, I like being that guy. He's like, I like people to know my name. I like to stand on top of the pedestal. And that's his driver. And I think at the time, specifically because the sport was such an oddity for the most part, like, you know, to travel and do these things and have that whole experience that so many people just thought it was like an amazing thing. And it was so out the box for most 99.9% of the percentile that like that hooked me, man. You know, I liked the challenge of that, and I liked being one of a few that were willing to do it, man. That was like my driver at the time, to be honest. And then I had a personal drive. I don't like failing at shit, you know? So it was like, it bothered me on a deep level, like to where like I was training by myself, waking up at 5, hitting the bags by myself, running. Like I had, and that's one thing that's kind of neat about my career. I had some training partners that stuck with me the whole time. But if you look at the guys who were underneath me, for the most part, I didn't really have close guys that had reached the pinnacle that maybe I had. So most of my training partners were not on necessarily the talent level as most of the guys I was fighting and their training partners. So, you know, I had to put in a lot of personal work.
That's wild.
Oh yeah.
So, all right. You said there's a lot of anger and things like you said a couple things, and I'm going to kind of, you know, go off the beaten path a little bit that we normally hit. Where do you think your anger comes from? You know where your anger comes from. What is it?
we could use the word came from, because I'm a loving, caring guy now. So that guy's kind of buried a little bit and only comes out when needed. That's what's nice about it. You know, I could get in any type of discussions now, and it's like at the end of the day, everyone know that guy's still in there, you know. But for the most part, I had a super challenging childhood, man. I mean, I was in 20-something schools growing up. We were super poor. You know, I mean, living in trailers with holes in them and stuff. My father died when I was young, and my mom had some iffy relationships through that. And unfortunately, I followed that around as it went necessarily, you know. And I moved out when I was 16. So a lot of challenges, you know, more so than most. So the fact that, you know, the family that I have today and all the things, and I'm just so blessed, you know. But again, all of those things angered me to the point where it pushed me and fed a fuel that constantly made me want to be somewhere else than I was. And I never felt like I had to be there. And that's like with today's, not to get off the path, because I can talk about this forever. But you know, it's very difficult for me to look at, you know, excuses and what people say nowadays, how there's not opportunity and there's stuff, because like, I mean, I'm prime example, man, that just, I don't let nothing define me, dude, you know. And if there was a person that had excuses, I definitely could have been one of those people.
You know, that's one thing that, real quick, that's one thing that, like, when I'm giving speeches or giving advice to everybody, I talk about, like, my biggest thing is the best thing ever happened to me is when I quit making excuses or listen to people make excuses for me. Because I'm like, no matter what excuses, any fight I lost, I promise it was my fault. I didn't do something right, I didn't train right, whatever. When you blame anybody for your stuff, you can't solve the problem. You know what I mean? So it's all my problem. Anything that goes wrong in my life, okay, maybe if a plane crashes on your house, but I mean, anything short of something like that, it's my fault. And once you accept these responsibilities, you can fix them. If it's not your fault, you can't fix shit. So once you do that, like you're saying, you're going to be all right. But most people won't do that now. Everybody's got a built-in excuse. Oh, it's society's fault. It's their person's fault. You don't have the opportunity. Everybody has. I mean, it's so easy right now. It's the easiest time to live ever. But people have built-in excuses, and they believe when people tell them it's not their fault. It's your fault, I promise.
Well, and what's crazy, Chris, is that I had this moment in my life a few years back. I had a few really rough business things that happened to me where I had to scrap everything and rebuild right back up. And I mean, I'm talking like very, very successful things. Some deals fell apart and stuff like that, multiple at the same time, and really put everything I had at jeopardy, you know. But with that being said, you know, what people don't understand is there's not really any bad and good things that happen in your life, right? When you look at it as like, the only reason things go different than you expect is, I'm a true believer that God wants you to experience those things so you could take those tools. And there's certain things, like, in fighting's a prime example, there's certain things that you experience in that arena, okay, that the normal person can't even come close to dealing with those challenges, you know. And that's why my boys, just to harp on youth wrestling, that's why my sons wrestle, man, because there is no other sport you could put a child in where they have that kind of adversity. It's very similar to a lot of the same things we deal with in fighting, but have that type of adversity at a young age. And you should see, man, Chris, I really, maybe next time we're at bare knuckle boxing or something, I'll let you spend some time with them, man. But those dudes aren't scared of shit. They stand there with tall chests, you know what I'm saying? And they don't care, man. You can tell them to get in there, announce the show, and start, and they'll do it, man, you know? So, you know, I'm a big fan of trials and tribulations, man. I really am. And when you realize that and learn to embrace both the good and the bad, man, you level up in life, dude. You just level up. When you change your perspective on all that, it's amazing, man. Very rarely will you see me get dented or off my path, dude.
So Rich,
just one quick ad, Rich, too, is like, I don't think people give the fight, you know, because you mentioned it, you, Chris, have mutual experiences of overcoming in the cage that make you absolutely unique, right? But on top of those experiences, there's also the fame, the recognition. So it's almost like a twofold thing, like an assault on your senses kind of thing. You could be
100%.
enamored with one or the other, but it almost makes it more difficult than just your average, than an actor or something like that, or other, because there's two types of challenges that you face.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I agree. Totally.
So, Rich, a lot of times, like at the end of our interviews, we talk about you had mentioned like CTE. I mean, not yourself, obviously, but people that you trained with. A lot of the abuse you took in the gym was actually a lot harder than what you sustained in a fight. Have you looked at strengthening your neuroplasticity through the use of psilocybin?
No, luckily for the most part, and I don't know if it was just I have a brick for a head or, I just really didn't take too many hard punches. I wasn't necessarily the guy that just I wasn't necessarily fought like Spencer Fisher, but a guy just stand in the pocket and I love him as a fighter. Don't get me wrong. I have a lot of respect for the guy. But most of what I deal with is spinal cord injury, to be honest.
Okay, but that also helps with like past trauma. Like if you watch Dean Lister on Real Sports on HBO, it showed that his past trauma was what was really bothering him on top of the blows to the head. And him and Ian McCall, when they went through it, it felt like it was kind of, they were able to live their life without having to carry that weight anymore.
Yeah.
Are you open to it, just out of curiosity?
I mean, I'm open to anything, to be honest. You have to remember that what I do in medical sales, I bring new technologies. It's what I do by nature. So by no means am I not open to listening to conversations and things like that about that. But it's kind of weird at the same token. I also have, I've come to some acceptance. People make fun of me all the time. I'm a little heavier than I used to be. I don't roll or train anymore. But, I tell everybody, man, I'm like, first of all, if I was to do that right now, it would have nothing to do but be selfish, because I know that I only have like my back's in really bad situation right now, and I probably would benefit from surgery. So I have a few more miles left before I got to bridge that gap, and I save them for my sons, man. You know what I'm saying? Like if it's not doing something with my kids and for me to get out there, and don't get me wrong, they chatter at the gym. Come on, what you and I'm like, man, I'm used up, but I'm okay with that. I really am. Like I have a certain level of acceptance, and you see guys and when we talk about the guys who kind of our generation, Chris, you see a lot of guys that struggle with that. And so many guys try to just keep that same pace, and then I look back and I'm like, I ask myself when I see him, I watch a lot of guys, I have a lot of friends on social media and stuff, but like, what is the why on that? Like you're sacrificing time with your children or leveling up in your businesses and stuff. Because why? Because, it helps your ego to remind you that that's who you were, or trying, you're not that guy anymore. You know what I'm saying? And you have to be okay with that to some extent.
Yeah. Acceptance and being realistic is important. You know what I mean? I mean, it's not a sign of weakness that you can't do things. I remember I was at the gym a while ago, and this kid, he's like 23. When you land on your back and all of a sudden you like karate jump up and like right off your back, he did that. And I was like, dude, I ain't done that in like 30 years. It's just like, why would you do that right now? Like it struggles me to get up, and you're like, yo, just jump up. I'm like, dude, you're just young, I'm just like, I can't do that, and I don't want to, and I accept that. It's like, just do what you can do. It's funny, man. You just see the different levels, and people who have a problem with that, man. That's a problem with you. You gotta accept this stuff, man.
Yeah. So you said you had broke your orbital in the Pete Spratt fight. Am I correct?
Yes.
So a month and a half later, he fights March 17th, 2001, Donegal Submission Fighting Championships. You fight in a 4-man tournament.
No,
wow.
It was actually like I had 9 bouts that day, actually.
There was what?
I had 9. Half of them were submission too. So some of them were open weight class submission only. So I did like 4 or 5 grappling matches, and then I did the tournament after that.
Okay. There's a real weird thing going on. I looked through it, and I like to piece it together, kind of see if somebody went somewhere or fought somebody famous. And, in the first round, you fight Where's that? I think I just hit it. Yeah, I apologize. In the first round,
Jeremy Jimenez.
Yes, Jeremy Jimenez. But then in the second round, you fight Edwin Alsites, and you won by Kimura, so you're 2-0. But Edwin Alsites appears to fight 3 times, and it's a 4-man tournament.
Dude, you got me. And the thing was, is at Texas they didn't allow face strikes at that time. Remember, there was years in Texas they just let you do like pancrase or some shit like that.
Open-handed strikes.
Yeah, So it wasn't like a regular MMA match like that.
Who was the promoter?
A guy, Zulfi Ahmed, who runs a big kind of traditional martial arts school. So the Dungle tournament's actually an Indian-based event that they do in India. I think India or Pakistan. No, I'm sorry, Pakistan. And they have a big war club that the winner wins. But you got to bring it back the next year, which kind of sucks. But it's this big, like, huge org that you can smash someone with. It was actually a pretty prestigious thing. But yeah, when you went over in Texas, and that's why a lot of the Texas guys came over to Louisiana, you couldn't do just 100% traditional mixed martial arts.
Okay. So we're going to fast forward a few fights, and Lee Coates starts to kind of, plant some seeds in the mixed martial arts world. I've got a lot of respect for the Freestyle Fighting Championship, and they brought in a local Iowa guy, a Midwest guy, Joe Jordan, who had a real hot name at one point. Like I think he had like 30 wins in a row at one point. And they bring him in. Yeah, Joe Jordan was a stud. And they bring him in to fight you, and you make pretty quick work of him.
Yeah, that was a great fight for me. And hats off to Joe. Do you guys follow his son at all?
Yeah, his son won a national championship in wrestling.
Yeah,
really.
He's still got his son's actually one of the top wrestlers in the whole country right now. He's amazing.
Who's he wrestle for?
He's still in high school. He travels all around.
He's
float around. I think they homeschool and stuff like that. But a little bit,
Barrett Jordan.
Barrett, yeah. So if you hear his name, Barrett, yeah, he's phenomenal.
So did you know Joe from the Iowa scene? So you went into this fight having scouted him because he was a known quantity from up there, tough guy himself too.
Yeah, I think I ran into him at a Whoop Ass Wednesday. I mean, not Whoop Ass Wednesday, but that was my show. But Monty did those Tuesday night fights up there or something like that. I think I ran into him there. But again, I felt like maybe at the time we were kind of had the same respect as far as level that we were kind of looked at, So to go in there and really dominate that fight like I did, I dominated the whole thing. Really kind of helped where I was starting to be where I wanted to be.
How was it dealing with Lee Coates?
Lee was a great guy, to be honest. Him and his partner, actually, Rob Braniff. I was closer friends with Rob Braniff. They were 50-50 partners in the FFC. And they did a good job, man. They brought in a lot of talent at the time, fights that were UFC caliber fights they were putting on, to be honest. You could go through the list, and I mean, there was some really, really entertaining top level bouts.
But Rich, it's funny back then, like the UFC only put on 5 or 6 fights a year, so everybody had to fight outside the UFC. So there was like you said, smaller promotions could have great fights because they had to fight there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we sometimes take deep dives just with people that worked with promotions. So we've done, obviously, Monty. We just knocked out Danger Zone. I hope to sit down with Rob and Lee one day and just have them bring us through, the FFC, because that organization was absolutely special. They really did a great job. I agree. When you were up working out with Miletich, was Lee Murray in the room at all with you?
No, and I don't necessarily know why. I think he got arrested right before I really started putting a lot of time up there.
You got framed before you went up there, I think, is what you're looking for.
Legend.
Yeah. There's only 80 million missing. I mean,
€80 million.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, there's definitely big difference in euros and dollars for sure.
For the record too, Joe Jordan, Rich is talking about picking up, head of steam. That's now that's his 7th fight he won in a row. So he's starting to clean up his record real good right now in this street.
You kind of you're hitting your stride big time.
We're starting to understand it a little bit, learning that, you got to learn a little something other than be just a little tough, so.
I got a question, Rich. At this point, are you actually doing like training camps or are you just fighting all the time?
So that was one thing my whole career. I probably did 5 training camps my whole career. And every one of those training camps I lost, actually. So, and they were all like, and I really listened to people. That was kind of my mistake. They were like, oh, you should go here and you should do this and blah, blah, blah. And to be honest, like it took me out of my zone mentally. And, the thing is that when you train with other coaches and stuff, they're going to want to implement what they like to do, and it wasn't really, it was kind of changing my style. And I learned in the long run, but what I should have did was really did those camps but I was fighting every 3 weeks. So I really didn't have any off time.
Yeah.
But really I would have probably benefited more doing those as more of a just recreational training atmosphere, doing it on my leisure than putting pressure on me, because here I am, when I'm getting ready for a fight, I'm going 100%, but when you're going 100% and doing a lot of things that you don't normally do, it breaks down your body. And I feel like that in those instances, that kind of happened to me quite a bit.
Yeah.
Well, you were, like I said, fighting at a rapid pace. You only have 2 more fights in that year, and then you go on to fight, you make your UFC 41 debut. What was it like getting the call to finally making it to the big show?
Yeah, I really don't remember that moment other than, well, Monty, it was crazy because I don't even know why Monty asked. He should have just signed my name and stuff. But, again, he'd be like, hey, are you interested in fighting? The answer is always yes, it's just throw me a name, but yeah, so it was exciting. It's so funny because it was at a time period. So Tim Sylvia, I think on that, was he not the main event on that card?
Yeah, he fought Rico.
Yeah. So this is how cheap and early in the just talking about the sport in general, it was me and Tim Sylvia had to share a room. So they made us share a room. And I remember I hooked up with some girl and I made him sit in the hallway for like a few hours. And I can't remember if that was like the night before the fight.
Oh my God. Terrible.
Yeah, we were forced to share a room, and he was the main event for a title bout.
Wow, that's nuts.
Yeah.
So you fight Yves Edwards, and we had Yves on about a month and a half ago, and we asked him, what was your motivation for that fight, and he knew right away. He said, well, when Rich fought Pete Spratt, Pete said to himself, man, 170 is too big for me. I got to go down to 155. So that means I am going to be the guy that he thinks he's ready for at 155. You could tell it like whatever gym activity he was supposed to do, it multiplied it by 2 or 3. Yeah. Just that little tiny statement, pushed him so much harder. What was you had mentioned it was a lot different then than it is now, obviously. What was your experience like?
Yeah, I just, for that specific fight, and it's not that I was nervous, but I definitely put too much unneeded stress on myself wanting to perform. And you have to understand that it was like right at the beginning when I started being managed. So it was like my first time up at Pat Militich's. So I'm doing just these, 3-day-a-week workouts up there. Everything is like, and that's the problem. This is what people don't understand. Like, I'm going to say this to you, if any young fighters are watching episode stuff, is that there is nothing that is like a deal breaker, and I remember telling myself over and over, like, everything is hinging on this moment. My whole life is going to change. I'm going to move to Iowa. I had this whole big grand idea of what the end result of this amazing, fantastic experience is going to be. And then it turned out to be exactly none of that stuff. So I just put way too much pressure on myself, and I didn't have anybody really guide me through that. And I was putting a lot of pressure on myself training up there, you know, and there was a lot of tough guys that I was training with too. So to bring that type of intensity for, you know, I think I was up there for like 6 weeks, sleeping in Monty's basement. You know, it was train, sleep, eat, train, sleep, eat. I mean, it was just not a good place psychologically to be. And by the time I got to the UFC, I was wore out, man. I just really was. It wasn't that I was overtrained. I was just mentally exhausted.
How'd you feel about fighting Yves? Because you guys, you would know each other from the Southwest scene, you know, Southeast scene there, yeah. Texas, Louisiana, and stuff. He knew about your rep. What have you heard about Yves at this point?
Yeah, no, I mean, he had a lot of respect. I mean, that's the whole thing. Like back in the day, you could look at, you know, both hands and you could talk about the top guys on there. And then it kind of fell off after that, you know? So there was a reputation amongst guys in your weight class that, you know, you guys walked in the hall and you gave each other kind of a little funky look because you knew you were fighting each other. Like there was no like 20 guys, 30 guys to choose from, you know? If you were a top guy, you were it's guaranteed that you're fighting each other, you know? Might not be this year, might not be 6 months from now, but it's going to happen. And you know, he was really good. I think it was kind of at the top part of his career too. You know, it's funny, and I've seen some articles about this, and I know it to be true just from my own personal experience. But you know, fighting is very much on a scaled mountain type trajectory. You know, and you have a small window where you kind of peak, you're rising up, you peak, you stay there for a little bit of time, and everything's a decline after that. And I really feel right around that time period for Yves was like that was really his time to shine. And I think I was still uptrending a little bit. You know, I wasn't quite at where I felt that I was my best in my career. So it was a great learning experience. And, you know, I came back after that experience extremely hungry, and that re-energized me as well, too. You know, basically had a little reality check. Hey, I got to rework myself all the way back up. And it brought me back to kind of my roots, to be honest.
If you look at your corner, it's literally a who's who. It's Jeremy Horn, Jens Pulver, Matt Hughes, and Monte Cox.
Yeah, the problem is, though, to be honest, none of those guys were there for me. You know, and just the reality of it is, you know, they were there because they were part of the Nordic. Yeah, I mean, there was no real emotional connection between it. I mean, me and Jens are pretty good friends, you know, and me and Horn got close over the years, decently anyway. But besides Monty, those guys couldn't give a rat's ass. They're probably signing autographs and taking pictures during my fight, you know.
Yeah, that's just, you know, the brutal reality of the fight game. I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah,
you know, it's sink or swim, and it includes your teammates. So in the middle of the corner, like in the corner, I love listening to the conversations. You kept mentioning, because you're at 155, obviously. I think is this your first fight or second fight at 55?
I'm not sure.
I think it's your first fight. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it's your first fight. And in between the corners, you're mentioning to them, I can't believe how strong he is. Was that due to the weight cut, do you think?
No, and that strength seemed because he was stopping my single leg. It's just bad technique at the time that I was doing to finish that. So I was exhausting. I mean, he was just squirrely. So it seemed like no matter what I did to hold on to him, he was able to get out of that. And I'd like to say that I'm a very physical, strong guy. So his elusiveness came across as being strong with me not being able to implement my strength on him. So if I was saying that, it was probably more out of frustration because of that, to be honest.
Man, Yves Edwards, wow. I mean, he's just a special fighter. I mean, him and Josh Thompson, as far as I'm concerned, that's a 155-pound title fight. And obviously he won. So, I mean, he fought a world champion. That's what it was.
Yeah, oh, no doubt. Got a few of those on my record.
Right. Well, yeah, that's good. Yeah, good. I mean, it's legit. So you have another regional show in Mississippi, and then you go and fight for ZST in Japan against Hiroku Katani.
Yeah.
Miguel, am I right?
Yes, you're actually right.
He's got a brother, Hiroki and Hiroyuki. So yeah, you got Hiroki.
Thank you. Rich, the abuse I get for my pronunciation of names.
Oh, no, actually,
that was amazing. Considering
pretty good, but Rich.
Actually, no love for both of them, both the Katani brothers. So I'll let you take us there. Like, go.
Yeah. So, Chris, just curious, do you know anything about the Zest event?
About what?
The Zest event, ZST.
It's special rules.
No.
Yeah. So some really amazing guys came out of the promotion, specifically like Imanari in particular. Yeah. So in this event in Japan, and they had funky rules. So you could only elbow to the head if you wore their kind of elbow pads that you had in their fight, right? But they made it where you could not use closed guard. So it made for a lot of action on the ground, which was cool, except they had a bunch of leg lockers in their organization.
Yep.
So not being able to close guard on a leg locker is like tough business, you know? And then you weren't allowed to punch to the head on the ground. So you could
elbow with a pad?
Standing up.
Oh.
And this is a tournament, I might add. I should have framed it better. This is an 8-man tournament. So wow. And this is a 50-fight club member.
This is a 16-man tournament.
Oh, it's a 16?
All in one night?
No. So they did one round prior, and then it went down to an 8-man tournament.
Okay.
So, but prior to that, and I'm surprised that's not on my record actually. But I was the first American ever to do because they did crazy stuff over there. They even had three man on each team tag team matches. But I was the first American ever to do a tag team match with Jeff Kern.
Jeff Kern, yeah. So let's concentrate on this tournament. So future UFC vet, 50-fight club member, kind of the poster boy for the organization. He's 12-0-2. You somehow win a decision in his hometown. And Chris, as we have talked about in the Pancrase, even though it's a different organization, Miguel pointed out, it's kind of a rite of passage to get a little cheated over when you go to Japan, when you're a foreigner. Yeah.
You must have killed.
Did you experience that at this point?
What's that?
Did you experience any tilting of the table at this point there?
Oh, so my very first time with that organization, I get there, right? And they signed me this party guy, right? And he's like, oh, Tokyo Roppongi, like, I'm going to show you all around. I got all these Russian girls. I open up my folder. I had 5,000 yen in there, whatever it was. And it was like, go out and have a good time tonight. This is the night before my fight. So, of course, what do? I go out and have a good time, right?
Roppongi.
Did the right thing.
Go to Roppongi. So it's not necessarily like they were cheaters over there, but they did things to try to influence. And
manipulators.
That's actually one of my favorite moments in that I had in MMA, because when I fought that tag team match, Jeff Kern broke his arm right away. Like, he blocked the very first kick, snapped both arms, bones in his arm. And I didn't know it. So he tagged out. I'm fighting for a little while. I go to tag him back in, and he like goes to decline the tag. And I'm like, what are you doing, motherfucker? I'm like, you're getting paid the same as I am. I'm like, tag in, I'm tired. So he tags in, but he instantly drops the guard because obviously he didn't want to stand up and hurt his arm more, and they got him into a leg lock. So I wound up fighting both guys for about another 12 minutes. And the way the rules are, if they don't have a lot of action on the ground, they would just stand you up. So every stand up, they got the tag back out. So they just kind of wore me down like that. And then the younger brother, who's the better Katani, and he fought in the UFC a few times and stuff like that. But he wound up catching me late in deep order, like 12, 13 minutes or something like that. And then they promoted him as beating me, So when the 16-man tournament came, I told the promoters, I was like, look here, I don't give a shit how you put me in the tournament. All I want to do is fight this guy one-on-one. And that was like their poster boy. So I really beat the shit out of him in that match. And what's cool is when the match was over, they came and they brought me, I was blue corner, and in Japan, the coloring's very symbolic for them. So they said, they gave me the red gloves. They said, we want you to switch corners and we want you to be the red corner. And we as an organization want to see you win the tournament. And over there in Japan, that's like especially because I was always looked at as the bad guy when I was over there, because I was over there a few times first, to have them like embrace me as like their guy, and show me that kind of respect was really cool. Because I think they felt bad, like kind of promoting him, saying that he had tapped me out and stuff, knowing the situation, you know. But again, that was their guy, and they're playing the game, so I get it.
Well, let's go back to the tournament. So in the second round, you fight another person that's high on their list of people to push, and it's Tomomomi Iwami. Miguel, you hear that? Excuse me, Rich. Miguel.
There's no I at the end, my friend. It's Iwama. But we'll leave it at that. It's all good. It's all good. We're helping Mike with his Japanese, Rich. That's all.
Yeah, sorry, Rich. Rich, you know, like the classes in school where the kids all take their books to one class, and when the bell rings, they just kind of stay there.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't switch classes. Yeah, it's kind of what we're dealing with here, except I'm on the receiving end.
Yeah, I won't make fun of you, because I promise. I'd be right there with you, trust me.
So you've got another high-profile Japanese guy in the second round, and he's 6-0. He's undefeated, and you've already went to a decision. And in this fight, take us through it.
Yeah, I beat the shit out of that guy. Like it was a really great fight. I don't even remember again. I mean, I was just so much physically, and that's one reason I like fighting a lot of the Japanese guys. They just weren't physically strong, and that's why I think they just never really did all that well against Americans, especially American wrestlers, because they couldn't handle that pressure and intensity. They're not used to. They don't train like that in Japan. They're very flowy and artsy, and you know, they just don't have that type of attitude. And I just remember that guy, like in between rounds, I looked over and he's like, fuck, you know, and I was like, yeah, I like that. So I don't think I tapped him out. I think it was a decision. Because the time was a little shorter and stuff like that. But that was a great fight. I mean, it was a beautiful fight for me, to be honest. A lot of like jump knees and things like that. So it was just a pretty fight, very active.
So you're saying it was a beautiful fight, but you know, from the luxury of my couch, I'm looking at a guy that's in a tournament, and you've got 2 decisions. How was your recovery in between fights? Because that's got to be draining, especially with the flight.
Yeah, I really didn't look at things like that, to be honest. You know, I was never one really to worry or overanalyze things. You know, I just go out there and do what I do. You know, so I don't recall being overly exhausted, more so than any other time. And just to even go back in reverse a little bit, when I fought that tag team match, it actually was a huge growing point for me, because I was always worried about letting it loose in fights. Like every fighter, I think, goes to that to some extent. Like they're never 100% balls to the wall from start to finish. You know, it's just, you try to get out there, you try to make smart decisions, not just completely blow your load. And then after that tag team match, I said I would never play the reserve game again. I'm like, fuck, if I could go against 2 guys for 12 minutes, I should always be able to fight 1 guy for that length of time. So it really helped change my attitude, to be honest.
So in the finals, Miguel, he meets hook and shoot champion Marcus Aurelio.
Ooh.
Man, dude.
Yeah, Marcus.
Murderer's row.
Marcus is real good, you know, and he did have our belt at one point. He's also a little bit tough to deal with, and that could be another insight as to why they wanted Rich to win. No Japanese guys left. Yeah. And it would have been easier for them if Rich had won than Marcus. But like Rich, take us through that fight. What was he like?
Yeah, I fucking cracked my orbital again, man. I got caught with a stupid like change level shot overhand, and again, it was the same injury, and that one actually worried me because I kind of lost vision a little bit, and since it was the same eye, I'll be honest, I probably could have fought a little bit more, but I panicked because of the injury a little bit, to be honest. I regret that, to be honest. I wish I would have brought that a little bit in deeper water. Not saying there would have been a different outcome, because he was hell on wheels at that time as well too. He was really a tough guy, and I knew that out of all the guys, if I met him in the finals, he would be definitely the most challenging, specifically because of the rules. You get a jiu-jitsu black belt on that level where you can't punch him in the face on the ground, where he doesn't have to worry about that. That's tough business.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the thing is, it's you can sit here and say, I wish I fought a little bit more, but you may have saved your vision as well.
Yeah. No doubt. And still, I mean, at the caliber of that tournament, there was a lot of really good guys in there. And so, looking back on it, even to get the runner-up spot on that, still proud of that, man. That was just a great experience. And, something that even today, I don't know if a lot of Americans are even able to replicate that type of experience, going to Japan that many times and being embraced by the community, and, having that grassroots organization like that. It was awesome.
So when we had Carlo Prater on, Rich, I'm just going to be very direct with you in regards to this. He fought in a kickboxing bout with that of yourself and at the 8-man tournament. And I know, obviously, you and Melvin Guillard have had like a documented history of butting heads.
We're buddies now, just for the record.
Pardon me?
We're buddies now.
Okay. But at the time, there were some problems.
Oh, absolutely.
And was this start with, you beat Melvin in the finals. And Melvin was like really a cartoon character of what a fighter, who was kind of like a WWE version of a fighter, because he had the Snoopy shoes on. He had the bright red colors.
Yeah, 100%.
There was a lot going on with him. Very boisterous.
Yeah.
So take us through your encounter with Melvin, because from what I understand, you guys fought on the street a few times as well as in the UFC.
Yeah. So I tried to help a bunch of guys out locally, and I had a show, and unlike Monty's events at the time, I tried to make it where if you were a local guy, you probably had a 60% chance or 55% chance of winning. And as long as you did what you were supposed to do, you would win. But so I put together good fights for you to get experience, but then also to build your reputation at the same time. I basically took my experience and tried to alter it for these guys. So I started bringing and pushing guys up from Louisiana by doing that. And I did that for Melvin quite a few times. He fought on my shows, and, we trained together. And I personally put time and investing in making him be successful, just because, it pissed me off where kind of Louisiana had this reputation where if you fought a guy from Louisiana, he sucks, he can't wrestle, and you're going to have a pretty easy fight, and I was helping changing that culture, and we just started putting some guys on the map from here. Well, when he got on the Ultimate Fighter, now he's the biggest, best guy in Louisiana, and we just knew that wasn't the case, and he knew personally that wasn't the case, because that was me. And, he started doing a lot of chatter on about, things, and some people were probably, putting fuel on that fire on purpose, but anyway, he was really getting ahead of himself, and we trained together numerous times, and I can't think of one training session where he ever came out on top. And especially that kickboxing match that we had, I knocked him out with I think I hit him with a jump knee at first, and then, knocked him out with an inside, like, hook uppercut combo. But it was more like flash knockout, but he didn't continue, needless to say. But yeah, so we had a long history, and, it was just, he just wouldn't shut his mouth, dude, and it just got to a boiling point. He sucker punched me at an event one time. And what's funny is a lot of the things that I was doing for Joe Silva, I told Joe, and I was like, look, I said, here's the deal. I said, I'm going to say yes to everything you say, but you're going to put me on a main event card with Melvin sometime down the road, you know. And one of the best times of my life, right? I mean, some people, if you ask like, what's the toughest thing you ever did, right? So Melvin comes up to me, we're at MGM, and he apologizes to me. We're in line. He's getting ready to fight. I'm cornering somebody. And he says this thing, and I said, look, Melvin, I said, I appreciate your apology, and I'm not going to be gangster a hood like you. I said, but I'm going to accept your apology, but I do want you to know that I do have conversations with Joe Silva, and I'm not going to be okay until I embarrass you and mentally put something in your head that you're not going to get rid of for the rest of your life. And I'm going to do it in front of millions of people. So I stuck out my hand and like shaked it. And his whole face was like white. He didn't know what to say. But Suge Knight was standing right behind me. And Suge Knight touches me on the shoulder. He goes, man, he's like, that was gangster. So I feel like when Suge Knight tells you that's gangster, you know what I'm saying? Like that puts you on a certain level. You know,
yeah,
so at that point, our fight was shortly after that, actually.
Yeah,
so.
yeah, I'm not sure that that's an acceptable apology, like response to an apology.
Absolutely, it was honest. Honesty is the best, my friend.
It's not what you want to hear, though.
No. So at this point,
you won that fight that day, though.
Oh, 100%. I won the fight. He always knew it, though. That's the whole point. Like, and a lot of people, like, so many people just, it's like, when it comes to fighting, okay, you have the people who are about it, and that's why they fight. And then you have people that fight because they want to prove that that's who they are, you know. And don't get me wrong, I don't necessarily think that that's Melvin by any means, because he's a fighter and he's got a ton of experience. Yeah, you know. But for a lot of guys, I see that, you know, and that's easily to be exposed.
So, you know, real quick, I noticed a lot of the fighters. They love everything about fighting except for the fight. You know what I mean? It's like they love the lifestyle, they love the fame, they love all the money. They don't like the actual grind in the fight, and that's you get a lot more of that nowadays than you did back then, because it was still around, but not nearly as much. You had to kind of embrace the grind, and I think a lot of those people, everybody did, but you could tell the ones who just want to be a fighter or if you love fighting.
100%.
Did you ever fight on those Battle of New Orleans cards?
No, I didn't actually. That was like kind of one of the guys that helped bring Melvin up. He's a promoter, Joey the Butcher Boy. He was an old school boxer, and those are like really local shows that he used to put on over there. But they would get drunk guys out of the crowd and put them against Melvin, and I mean he would just assassinate him, dude. I mean just I don't even know how somebody didn't get killed on those events.
Yeah, Melvin kind of told me a story about how him and a few family members, after his like 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th fight or whatever, because he was kind of becoming like what Shoney Carter was here in Chicago at the Tropicana, in essence, is what Melvin was doing at this event. And it's essentially they talked about, I'm not going to call it a robbery, but I'm just going to say maybe a check was written that might not have been 100% consensual with the amount on it.
Yeah. That's fun.
Yeah. So at this point, you get on Miguel Urate's radar and you start fighting in Euphoria. Miguel, was that planned? Was that planned, Miguel?
You know, I got to upstage you guys somehow.
Is that the late entrance? Okay.
No. So, I just went to refresh my drink. I'm glad I made it back.
That's right. So you start fighting with Miguel on Euphoria. Miguel, how does Rich jump on your radar? Like, where does he come from?
Monte, you know, at this point, I had a little bit better show. We had a little bit better budget. We could get a little bit better people. Monte was helping. You know, this show in particular is one of my favorite shows of all time.
Did you do the USA Russia show, or did you come in right after that?
No, this is me. This is.
I just wasn't sure if you promoted that specific. You were the matchmaker for that card.
Yeah. I was, and it was one of my favorite ones because, and Rich's fight was like actually a critical one in the pulse of the day, if you remember.
Bruce Buffer listed it as his favorite fight of the year, actually, that year on his website.
I you know, it was America versus Russia. First guy, the American was a little bit better, obviously, and he won his fight pretty easily. Second fight was Justin Eilers, and he wound up like getting thrown out of the ring and had a real rugged fight with a guy and won. Then Ron Faircloth got knocked out in 10 seconds. And this fight, you know, we're looking for an American needed to start a run here, and Rich wasn't going to lose a second fight in a row for that locker room. Yeah, I sort of remember that.
What Miguel's not saying, this was the most crookeded ass event I've ever been to. So they play the national anthem, and where was that at? Was that at? It wasn't at Trump's, huh?
Yeah, it was. It was Trump. Yep.
Okay. So in Atlantic City, and they play the American national anthem, and you expect the American national anthem, right? Well, anyway, the way that it's supposed to work is if you're going to play two national anthems, you always play the American national anthem last. Well, they flip-flopped that. So I didn't even know the Russian national anthem was going to be played. And when they played the Russian national anthem, I swear to God, 99% of the audience were Russians with black leather jackets on, and that place was rumbling. I was like, what the hell am I in, like, Moscow right now? It was like the whole organization at the time, and you know more specifics than I do, but it was heavily Russian-based owned with a lot of involvement with that. So when they said USA versus Russia, the audience was almost completely Russians.
I know nothing.
Well, I'm not going to say it was
nefarious. I'm scared to speak about it.
I don't know. I'll tell you, and he's right. I do remember a lot of those moments too. The bottom line is that Vlad Livrinovich, a Russian, was the promoter of record. Actually, his wife was. He was not able to get a promoter.
Remember her?
Yeah, she was a very beautiful woman, like very beautiful. But he wasn't able to get a license from the New Jersey Commission because he had problems on the casino end and things like that. They really go through your books in Jersey because
I'm sure it wasn't on his end. I'm sure it was an error in the casino. So go ahead.
There may have been some typos there, but you know. But so anyway, so his wife served as a promoter, and then from there you start. The bottom line is he knew a guy who would come and gamble like about $3 to $5 million a weekend at those shows. That's all the casino cared about, was that they bought their high rollers in from Russia, and he did market to the Russian audience in that market. And yeah, most of the tickets were sold to Russians. So
it was so sketchy.
It had that event, that kind of feel. But I think for the psychology of it, the Americans very much, like, you know, circle the wagons in the locker room stuff, and it became a momentous night. And like I said,
so let's talk about
the first one.
let's talk about that. So, Chris, this is a phenomenal fight. So, in essence, what takes place is Rich gets dropped several times in the first round, and it's
probably like 4 or 5.
Who's he fighting? Who's he fighting?
He's Sergey Golayev.
He was a Russian Muay Thai champion, super fast, knew how to punch going backwards the whole time. Super tall too, and super mean uppercuts. Like my favorite picture that I have to date is still I'm getting hit with an uppercut, and I don't think my head could extend back any further. Like it is all the way like where the back of my head is touching my spine. Like
when Overeem got hit by Francis Ngannou.
Yeah, I mean it was bad. It was bad by all means.
Goliath was pretty legitimate. He later on captured a win over Takanori Gomi, which you know is a pretty legendary win. And you know there are other big names on his record. I stuck him in later with Joaquin Hansen, and so he went 0-2 for me.
So Rich gets hammered that first round, and it's ugly, but. Like you're talking about grit earlier in this interview, where you talk about grit, fortitude, understanding who a person was when you see him face adversity. This is your fight. Like this is the fight where any questions you have about Rich, you just watch this fight. It's probably going to be answered because at the end of that first round, you got the takedown. Like you got it, you did it, and then when the bell rings, like you got up and. You know, rather than kind of like, oh God, what the hell was that? In your head, you go, I'm gonna win. I got it. You can see it like in your eyes. Like it's like your confidence from that one takedown, no matter you lost 4 minutes and 50 seconds of that first round.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yes. But that 10 seconds told you, I got this one. It's like, I'm tough. I can be here. I can withstand this. And in that second round, you get the takedown. And while ground and pounding, Sergey throws a dozen illegal punches or kicks and punches.
No, it's illegal knees to the back. I had him side mounted.
Yeah.
And he's pushing on my face, hitting. And remember, this is a guy that's like 6 foot something at 155. So he's got these sharp ass little knees, and he's pushing my head up and just kneeing me in the back of the head. My pupil stayed dilated almost for 2 months after that fight.
Jesus.
So
yeah, I was lacerated, huge big laceration on the back of the head. They was pissing me to fuck off.
Rich is bleeding like crazy. He's yelling at the referee. He's kneeing the back of my head. So the referee's like yelling at him to stop. He doesn't stop. So at this point, the referee's like, stop. Brings him over to the corner, has the corner translate.
He didn't even deduct this dude a point.
Never deducted a point. Thank you. They bring him back, they set him back down. First thing he does is that foul again. Yeah. And then they never take a point again. And dude,
I go berserk. That's one time I really got pissed off in a fight. Like I really lost my shit at that point. And just started freaking out, dude. Like I had some extremely aggressive ground and pound at that point.
Yeah.
So
and he continued.
Yeah.
Like he didn't care. He continued. He didn't care what the referee was saying. He was going to do it anyway. And, you stepped up your ground and pound, and you also hit a triangle, which was incredibly smooth.
Yeah, that was a great fight, actually.
Yeah,
we're
for
still
sure.
friends on social media. Actually, we follow each other. He's actually a pretty cool dude, man.
He was kind of a dick after the fight too, though.
I'm a dick too after most of my fights, but I like that. I mean, it's the same thing. Like I can respect that dick measuring contest, and that's the type of guy he is. You know what I'm saying? So. I can respect that, and those are fights that either way I feel alive after. Like I'll tell you, like I was so happy going home after that, and just that's why I did what I do, man. That those type of fights for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, he cheated. He did everything he could and still couldn't win. That's the buzz, Rich, that Rich is talking about, I think,
Yeah, some guys in Rich's situation will keep fighting. Like, oh, you keep fouling? Well, I could keep fighting too. And, Rich didn't. I mean, it was, like you said, it was a test of your will. You won. All right, keep being a jerk. We're still cool. Doesn't matter what just took place there. It takes a special individual just to kind of push past what it is you experienced, because man, you got hellaciously fouled.
No, it was I actually love. There was another fight later on I had with a guy kind of similar attitude, Reza Madadi, but I love those, and the same with Melvin. Like those type of like really emotional fights, I like that. That's just when I do my best, man. I just absolutely love them. Like the worst thing you could do is get me riled up like that. When you make it a sport and kind of, hey, bud, good luck to you. I don't bring my A game. Excuse me.
Very interesting.
That's interesting. So, Rich, there's certain rules we have on the show and benchmarks, and I have to mention this one. Otherwise, I will not hear the end of it from Miguel. You end up fighting Miguel's favorite fighter on a last-minute notice, Henry Matamoros. Wait, before you answer, Miguel, please tell us about Henry. Go ahead. Again, tell us about Henry, Miguel.
He's my guy.
Well, I appreciate that, Miguel. I appreciated that fight.
Yo, you know what? I mean, looking back at it too, and to be quite honest with you, Henry was a creature of the 90s, and I think Rich had him pretty heavily outclassed in this fight.
I was told that I was the first 10-7 round in New Jersey history, actually, for MMA.
Congrats.
Henry, he survives.
Well, here, I will even say this, Rich. If you were slacking off on your cardio because you saw the match, or you took it last minute, like I think I was at this one, Miguel. This was in New Jersey as well. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, I think I was at this one, and I remember hearing it was last minute, and it was Henry Matamoros. Obviously, I know who you are, and I've seen Henry fight locally about a dozen times. I was thinking, Rich, I don't know what kind of shape you are in, when you're off season, you're not in training camp, but I thought Henry would take a hellacious beating and probably pull off the win in the third round, just because it's a last minute fight for you and he can take a punch.
Yeah. No, that was just that was the best slams I ever hit in any fight. I need to get a hold of that video because I'd like to show my sons those actually. But I mean, they were like 180-degree, like invert body locks, just bouncing him on his head. Like it was, and
your hooks too.
What's that?
He threw some monster hooks.
Yeah, he that was just a great fight. And the production was great on that too, Miguel. Whoever you had to do the video work on that, just did a phenomenal job.
Why was Rico Rodriguez in your corner?
I didn't recall that he was, to be honest, but yeah.
Probably because he lives in New Jersey, then.
Yeah. Probably the only guy I knew that was up there, and Miguel was probably trying to cheap on flights or something like that for cornermen. Part of the deal. So,
did Miguel ever stiff you on any money, like $50?
$50.
Like yeah.
No, the only guy to ever stick me on the money, and I don't mind saying this, is that what's that Canadian promoter's name? Sven up there.
Stefan
Pantry?
Yeah, a little cocksucker. He stuck me on money, and I cut down to 45 too.
Whoa.
So, yeah, and I'm definitely not a 45 pounder.
Was that against Fabio Holanda?
No. So, and that's again too, that cheating bastard. So he, if you notice, if you look at his record, and what was that guy's name that Holanda beat right before we fought? Coulter Gill, maybe. Great up and comer. Man, that guy was a stud, man. But anyway, what Holanda would do is that, and I like the guy. I'm friends with. I mean, these guys are part of your life, So now you kind of watch him, and you hope the best for them and stuff. But he was notorious for grossly missing weight. And then Sven would just say, like, my guy went and was spying on him trying to cut weight, and this dude's just walking on the treadmill for 5 minutes, come up, and he's like, oh well, he's at his maximum weight cut, he's good to go. So what he would do is he would take the pay deduction just to win, have a severe advantage, especially a jiu-jitsu guy on that level. Weight's a big deal, and he would just take the cut because he was training St. Pierre and all these guys at the time. So promoting his wins, promoting his jiu-jitsu academy brought him in way more revenue than just the penalty that he had to pay for the weight cut. So when we fought, I think he was almost like 25 pounds or something like that overweight when we fought.
Wow. So Fabio Holanda, just to kind of, for everybody to recall, when we interviewed Sam Stout, the TKO years, Fabio, like, his level of jiu-jitsu is insane. And he's the Brazilian top team head coach for Canada. And Stout even said, yeah, I knew it was going to be a hard first round, but the guy can't even make weight. I just had to wait him out. He was talking all types of crap. And
that's what happened to me too, actually. I knew that. I just had to bring him in deep water, and I had a very tough first round.
Yeah, Stout called him lazy, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I could agree with that.
Yeah.
I like Sam Stout too. He's a great guy.
Super good exchanges. And he, like, if you look at Fabio Holanda's record, one, it's upside down. It's terrible. He's got a terrible record. But then when you look at the guys he fought, dude, it is deep water. It's just stud after stud after stud. And I mean, say what you want about the guy. He may not have made weight, but he missed weight against real tough opponents.
Yeah.
So why don't we close up to Euphoria? You fight one more time, USA versus the world. You fight another Japanese guy, Daisuke Hanazawa. Oh, Chris.
You're right on point, man. Right on point.
Daisuke Hanazawa. Man.
Look at Mike. Look at Mike killing it.
Hey, I love me.
What is A game?
Go ahead, brother.
No, I said you practice on that.
Oh, shit, dude. I hear it tomorrow from Miguel anyway.
That's 13 who lived with Dave Strasser for a couple of years later.
He fought for me too. Yeah.
And he also fought Eddie Alvarez. So the disappointing thing about this to me is that when Rich beat Matamoros, that was the start of an 8-man tournament. And the other winners of that tournament, it would have been Rich against Hermes Franca. And the other side of the bracket was supposed to be Joaquin Hansen and Yves Edwards.
Wow.
And I believe that for the time was a pretty dangerous tournament, but it didn't progress past the first round. And Rich was obviously, already, given a lot to the organization. So we had to bring him back, even though I couldn't, we couldn't get the Hermes fight. So Hanazawa was a guy that came over for us a lot. And, everybody gets motivated to fight. Rich already had a lot of experience with the Japanese fighters and stuff, but this was supposed to have been Hermes Franca.
Yeah, that was a really tough fight for me. He had me in more of an Eddie Bravo a lockdown, and I don't like that lockdown for MMA because you lay flat on your back, so it really makes you susceptible to punches. And I really feel like that's why a lot of Eddie's guys, even though they're all great at jiu-jitsu, they don't do that well in MMA because he bases a lot of his style of groundwork off of that type of lockdown. Great for jiu-jitsu, great for rolling under, makes you really susceptible to get punched a lot. But with that being said, I was coming off a really bad staph infection in my leg. I probably should have pulled out of the fight, didn't, but still went forward with it. And the same knee that I had the staph in, he locked me down, and I really felt everything tearing my knee. I make it from the end of that round, and I come back, and Monty's my corner, and I said, Monty, I'm like, I really think I messed up my knee bad. And he's like, oh, okay, so I go out there and I go to throw a kick, and my whole knee just rotates around sideways. And I felt it like pivot on the actual joint. The whole thing just slid like that. And I fell down, and instantly then I knew I like tore everything in my leg. And what's funny is when you watch the video, the commentators are like, yeah, Rich must just feel really confident in his guard because he keeps just working his guard, blah, blah, blah. And I come back after the second round, and my face is white. I told Monty, I'm like, my knee is fucked. And Monty's like, look, I walked around the ring. He goes, I looked at all the judges, and I don't know if he actually did or not, but he had me convinced that he looked at the scorecards, and all I needed to do was make it out of this next round, and I would win a decision. So, with that being said,
he didn't leave the corner.
Yeah, good corner. He did a great job, man. He did his job, But I won an ugly decision, but I was out for 7 or 8 months after that because I had to get reconstructive surgery on my knee. And that was very challenging for me. That was the longest break I had since I started doing this. And, I was they used my own patella tendon, ACL, MCL, medial collateral. It was all torn. And, I was out for a little bit of time because of that.
Wow.
A lot of people didn't know that. I just kind of slid it under. I was afraid it'd be used against me later on in the fight game.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't realize that type of repercussions came from that fight, man. I'm sorry. I guess I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Well, in between then, you had a scheduled bout with Yves Edwards that was canceled because obviously your injury, and they bring you to Extreme Challenge in Iowa due to the fact that Chris Mickle was in the UFC. He needs one win. He goes back there, comes in his karate pants. Comes in karate pants, and Rich does exactly what you're supposed to do to somebody, in gi pants. You want to walk us through that?
I don't remember much, except there was like 2 or 3 really hot girls sitting right cage side, and I purposely brought him over to right where they were sitting, and then I'm talking to them as I'm like ground and pounding him. I just remember one really, really huge slam right at the beginning, like iconic slam, and then just keeping him against the cage and talking to these girls the whole fight, and just till the fight was done pretty much. But it didn't have much more substance than that, to be honest.
Yeah, it was pretty fast and furious. Like it was one-sided and ugly. And I might also add, when you fought Fabio Halanda, you weighed 158.8 and he was 162.6.
Yeah, that was a lie though. That was because the first time he weighed in, he was like 70 something, and my cornerman watched him go cut weight. So when they came back and said, "Oh, I watched him weigh in at 162, will you still accept the fight at a pay deduction?" It was a complete lie. That, like, no doubt about it.
How much did Stefan Petry stiff you for?
So I was supposed to fight a 45-pounder. I don't recall his name, but he was the top 45-pounder at the time. What was his name? You
Is
might
it
remember
Menjivar?
him. Yeah. No, was it Menjivar? There was another. Maybe it was Menjivar. It was either him or another guy that was right there, kind of at the same. It might have been Menjivar. I don't remember. But anyway,
it wasn't Hamnick. I mean, Hamnick was 35.
No, it was a guy with the same type of complexion as Menjivar. Like, and it might have even been him. I don't recall. But anyway, when I got there, they said I was too big and they declined me fighting, but I'd already made weight. So I was expecting to at least get my show money on that. He's promised me that he would pay me on it. So I made weight, flew up there, stayed up there, did the training camp and stuff. It was a high profile fight. And then I never received any revenues from that. So it's what it is,
Yeah.
Wow, that's rough. Now, Josh Rafferty was in your corner against Fabio Holanda. Would you mind describing your relationship with him?
Dude, I love that dude, man. Seriously, he truly is like a brother to me. It's one of those things that me and him could not see each other for years, and we get back together. He's just a good guy, man, and loves martial arts. Is still he had a severe neck injury. He had to get neck surgery about 2 years ago, but he does a lot of private training with Batista. Really involved in MMA and stuff like that. I mean, WWE wrestlers, training those guys and stuff. But just a great guy.
Okay. So you also have one of the unique things that I see on your record, and like I said, we're not touching too much of the UFC stuff here due to the fact that we'd like to have you back on again, and we're at about the 2-hour mark right now. Dude, he's got a catchweight win over Anthony Johnson.
Yeah.
Chris, you're muted.
Yep. Hold on. I'm muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I remember that fight. I remember watching it because at one point they talked about me taking that fight, but we were both managed by Ken Pavia.
Rich, you brought your team up to Wisconsin, and it was in Milwaukee. Everybody on the card got stiffed, except I think you had an issue with the promoter where it might have been physical, but you guys got paid.
Which promotion was it?
It was in Milwaukee. It was in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. You brought some of your guys up there. I remember being there, and there was no one in the audience. I think maybe it was Shark Fights or Shark Fin or somebody like that. But I remember, you weren't putting up with any shit, and people, not everybody got paid, but I know you walked out of there with some cash.
Yeah, I don't recall that at all.
Yeah.
There's so many things that are just it's just crazy, man. It's like some of the stuff that I experienced, when I look back at it now, it's like a different life, man. It's like I'm talking about somebody else sometimes. It's such a distant memory, a lot of those things, man. But it does make me smile.
So Carlo Prater, we've had 2 people on the show that have fought Reza Madadi in Superior Challenge in Sweden.
Yeah.
He's a super hothead. How was your experience with him?
So that is one of my favorite fights of all times. And what's funny is I headbutted the shit out of him at weigh-ins because he got in front of my face and did that yelling shit, and I mean, that's, you're just not going to do that, But anyway, did you ever get a chance to watch that fight?
I did, and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, you need to. And dude, I mean, it's so first of all, they changed the weight when I got there because I was told 55 on the contract, and then what they did, they changed it to kilos, what made it 52. And they didn't tell me that until, or 53. They didn't tell me that till after I was getting ready to weigh in. So here I am already cut down. And when you tell a guy that's already right there that he's got to go lose 2 or 3 more pounds, I mean, it is like a dream crusher, So they gave me an hour to go do that. So then I did that. Then I get back and they go over the rules. And then they get to my fight. And I'm like, well, what the hell are they singling my shit out for? They know that I was like a side mount guy and I love to drop elbows and work guys over kind of tight like that. So they go, oh, your guys is an international Sweden rules match. What the fuck is that? You know? And they said, well, there's no elbows on the ground for you guys. So I'm like, oh, okay, I see how. So you dig me on the weight, then you say you take away one of my best positions, you know, and then I lost. It wasn't even a split decision; it was a unanimous decision, and that's what me dropping him in the first 10 seconds of the fight and controlling. It was like the Ben Earwood fight almost. My transitions in that fight it was the best I ever moved. And I mean, there was not one thing that he would do to me that I would turn right around and do better than him. So it was so bad that actually the audience was throwing stuff in the ring and they were booing. And you just, at an international event like that, if you're the guy coming in, you definitely don't get that response on a decision. And it was so bad. We protested to the Sweden commission, but my fight and also Jeremy Horn's fight, and I don't recall what Jeremy Horn's fight was about, but it was just straight robbery, to be honest. I don't feel it was even close.
Yeah, Jeremy lost a split decision to Talis latest. So they were doing a Brazilian versus American match up there, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, Talis may have had
Jim.
Like jiu-jitsu, like
he had a gym that he was affiliated with there. And then the same in my match, two of Reza's his manager and then one of his other training buddies were the two judges selected for that fight too. So I was really pissed off because I was looking at like that was kind of like a great fight for me to kind of make my mark and make my splash back in. And then he got signed to the UFC right after that fight.
Yeah, he cherry picked his opponents like Carlo Prater. Like this is like you just gave your example. He takes the fight on like 2 days' notice. He flies in, doesn't even get to go to the hotel. They bring him right to the venue, and he's off by like 3 or 4 pounds. And Reza went ballistic on him, calling him all types of names. And he's just like, I got on a plane. I went from one city to another city to another city. I haven't been home. I really didn't even go home yet, and I haven't been to the hotel.
Yeah.
And he said Reza was just out of control, but he was a real nice guy after.
Yeah, that wasn't. I've always been a fan of Carlos Prater. That wasn't one of his best performances by any means, but it could.
He said that too. Yeah, he mentioned that.
Some of those things that were wrapped around that, you know. But the event itself, man. I had so much fun into it, and they're still running pretty successful events. I mean, I chime in every now and then, and I see, but the production's great. You know, I had a blast over there. I would probably fight today if they call me and said, "Hey, you want to fight in Sweden for a few times?" I'd be like, "Yeah, absolutely."
Cool. Well,
Great
we
guys.
did your pre-UFC career. You know, Rich, at some point in the future, we'd love to have you back. You know, clean up and get your UFC bouts out of the way. But man, we really, really appreciate you being here.
Yeah, no, it's awesome, man. And I'll tell you, I appreciate what you guys do because what you do is, and I'm probably not the only one that's saying this, but you know, these type of experiences, like there's kind of a history, a time period that, you know, the fights were on VHS, man. You know what I'm saying? Like there was no YouTube or anything like that. So really, you guys are kind of conserving history, man, on a time period that wasn't really all that well documented, you know? So to hear some of these guys and, you know, some of the things that happened, I mean, I look back now too, man, and you go back and I don't remember, I did it about a month ago, but you know, all the guys in the community that have like passed away for whatever reason, some super tragic stories and stuff, man. And until you talk about these guys, it's just kind of forgotten, you know? So what you guys are doing to preserve history and the sport and to pay homage to some of the things and the events that help build this thing is just awesome, man. And I appreciate your guys' time.
Well, Rich,
Man, I appreciate that.
yeah, you might be one of 50 listeners. We can't afford to lose any of them.
Well, like you were saying, the reason we started doing this is all these cool stories are old school stories, and they're going to die off if we don't record them because, I mean, old school stories are so crazy. People don't understand what it was like. These new guys have no idea. It was the Wild West.
Yeah.
And so it's like talking to people like you and people like, how did you get here? What was your story? I mean, you're never going to find a guy who just started fighting right away. That's just not how it works anymore. So I love it. And thank you for being here.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I love what you're doing with bare knuckle boxing too, Chris. I'm a big fan of the organization. I haven't been to one of a bad fight with those guys yet. I'm totally entertained. And it was funny. I was at a fight in Mississippi, and I was with a group of friends, and one of the fights really had me riled up where I stood up and, I was kind of like extending, trying to see over the crowd. And one of the guys that were with me was like, Rich, he goes, I haven't seen you stand up in a fight in a long time, and I think that kind of sums it up, on what that event's about. And I really, really enjoy those events. So I love seeing you behind that. And, it's entertaining for me, for sure.
Hey, come anytime you want, man. I'll get you, no matter what, we'll get you in, that. So,
yep, awesome.
Bring that.
All right, Lights Out Podcast. Rich Clementi is in the books. Mike, another good one, huh? Another great one.
Every single time you run into a guy like Rich Clementi, people go, well, you need to have him back on again. And it's like, okay, but you said it with John Fitch. You said it with Dennis Hallman. You said it with Jeff Monson. You said it. Yeah, I mean, it's just, we give all these examples, even Hector Lombard, who obviously we just had. What we're going to do is wait till we get our 100th episode, and then we're going to come back around again. We're going to try to get 100 straight guys, different people, men and women, and then we're going to kind of get the different portions of their career.
Yep, and I think, Rich was a great ad in that I think he delivered on a lot of different facets that we talked about, where you get the idea of the fighter. I was surprised they didn't have as many full training camps as I have, but I think as other fighters, but I think that's one of those things that he had promoting, and doing all kinds of other things going on too. So very interesting. Talked about back issues and a few of the injuries and things, and he's smarter than I am in terms of the medical stuff. So definitely there's a lot of angles, a lot of cool stuff besides the old school fight stuff, which he delivered in spades too. So
I agree. Excellent. Well, guys, please like, share, subscribe, and we're gonna keep this truck moving forward. We're on to the next interview.
Check out the full interview on iTunes, Spotify, and all major podcast platforms.